Greetings gamers, my name is Anto and this is a video that a bunch of you have been asking for ever since I showed off my version of a globe map, and it's how I take my world maps and turn them into globes that you can use to make spinning GIFs like this one, or that you can put into your other projects if you're making a campaign setting guide or if you have a wiki for your campaign, whatever you want to use it for. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. This video is sponsored by Moonlight Maps and their plain terrain battle maps now on Kickstarter, more on them later. So the first thing that I want to do before we dive into the how-to is the why. Why would you want to turn your map into a globe? Well, there's a couple of different reasons for this. For me, it mainly comes down to kind of an immersion element to my world building. If you show your players an image of your map, your world map, that's one thing, but then to show them a globe of it, I think it just makes it that one step above and makes the players buy into the world as being like a more real place a little bit more. They're like, oh, I can understand that this is a planet and this is more of a real thing. I don't know if I'm alone in that. Let me know down in the comments below whether you think seeing a globe of a map makes it more real than just seeing a regular map. So to show you how to do this, I'm going to use one of my world maps, the map of Istar, my homebrew world. I'm going to jump into Incarnate for this. Now this will work in any image building software, whether using Incarnate, Wonderdraft, or building it in Photoshop. There's just a few key things that you want to bear in mind. Now, I have not done these in this map, so I'll show you how to fix them. So if we open up the map here, you can see this is the map that I made to be shown to the players as a flat image. This wasn't intended to be made into a globe map, and as such, there are a few things that we're going to need to do to be able to adjust that. The first thing is the ratio. Now, when you put a flat image to a globe, it's going to distort the image. Of course it is. The best ratio that I found is kind of a 2:1 ratio, so twice as wide as it is tall. So if you're building your map from scratch and can build it in that 2:1 ratio, that'll make your life easier going forward. But if you can't do that and you're using a program like Incarnate or Wonderdraft, there is still some things that you can do. So using Incarnate as an example, you can see here we've got a bunch of different options for the layers. All we have to do is if we turn off the background, and if I go over to the layer here and turn off the top layer here, I can export this out as just my landmass, and then I can do the same by getting rid of all my labels and exporting just the ocean, and then drag that into Photoshop and resize the ocean to be 2:1 and place the landmass over the center of it. And that's what I actually did. I dragged those two separate images out from Incarnate, exported them separately, and then rebuilt them in Photoshop to get the relevant aspect ratio. But if you're starting from scratch, I recommend starting at that 2:1 aspect ratio. It's going to make your life a lot easier. Then once that's all exported out, you can see it's going to look something like this. You can see that I have made a lot more padding of the ocean over on the sides there, and that's just going to help us when it comes time to wrapping around the globe, help get less distortion. You're still going to get some polar distortion, but you'll get less around the center of the globe, because anytime you're trying to put a 2D image onto a 3D plane, it's going to do strange stuff, which you'll see once we drag it into some of the programs that we're going to be using to make our globe. So the most basic option is a map to globe site, map to globe. When you go on it, I'll leave a link down in the description. This is what you're going to be presented with. You can see it is a globe and there's a wireframe mesh on it that's going to show the way that it's going to distort the image. You go up into images and you just click on choose a file for surface and put the relevant image there. You also have the option to upload a nighttime version of that image. So if while you're making your map, you want to make a version that's got a nighttime filter on it, maybe put some light effects on it for some cities, you can upload that, and anywhere that's in shadow on the planet, it'll upload that nighttime version. You also have the option for a height map if you've got a height map for your world, or a background to put behind the globe itself. I don't put a background because I want to export out a clean version of the map. So we're just going to hit OK there, let it populate, and immediately you can see we've got a pretty basic globe. If I scroll up towards the pole, you can see what I mean about the way that it distorts the image. So if we go over to the original map, you can see that the original map here has this upper continent here. It goes to the boundary of the map and kind of becomes flat, and that just kind of crimps in on itself in the globe. It's not too much of a problem. It is something to be aware of. So if I was making this map from scratch again, I'd probably pull this continent down a little bit and give it a northern border so that it didn't do that. And then you can see down at the southern pole, both of these two islands have been stretched and distorted well beyond even really recognition. Like if you look at this rightmost island here, it looks nothing like that in the globe version because of the way that it pulls and distorts. So it's not going to be perfect. And ideally this is, like in the real world, going to be something where your kind of equatorial countries are going to look the best in the projection. So that's something that you want to bear in mind. But if we go back up to our kind of equator countries and our two big mega continents, you can see that they look pretty good. Now you could export this image exactly as it is. You have the option to save and just export it like that, or you've got a couple of different options to enhance this. So we go ahead and click on options. We can change the background to be solid black. Really useful for when we're exporting this, and if we want to remove the background, we can toggle the transparent background. Again, if we're saving that, get it to save as a transparent PNG. You can show the pole line just so you can see where the axial tilt is of the world. You can show the grid of the longitude and latitude lines. This is really useful for getting a sense of how your map is being distorted, and it can also be useful for figuring out some prevailing winds and trade winds and some of the other kind of navigation aids that you might want to do for your map later down the line as well. Then you can also show atmosphere. Now, atmosphere's got a couple of different options. So you've got light scattering, which will change this color here, and you can change what color you want that to be. And you've also got kind of how much bounce light within the atmosphere you get. I like putting a little bit of scattering on. I like having just a hint of blue around the edge of the globe. I think it makes it look more like it is a globe and that it is kind of in space. It has that globe look to it, but I don't want it to necessarily overpower the original colors. So we only put a very small amount on it. Then we got options for our background if you've uploaded a background image, as well as a height map. So if you upload a height map, you can change it to be 3D, and that will kind of give you a 3D globe, and you can change the scale of that. Most of you aren't going to want to do that because most of us, I can't imagine, are making height maps to go along with our maps, but the option is there if you want it. Let me just go over to screenshots and we can download a screenshot of it. So we get the option for a single screenshot at the current view, or we can download a set of up to 8 different images at different angles. So we're going to go ahead and download all 8 shots like that, and then that gives us our different images and a turnaround of the world. If you want something a little fancier, you can go into animations and you can make a GIF of your planet turning. You can choose the direction and choose the kind of sun rotation speed, and whether you want the fixed sun or fixed globe. So we're going to go fixed sun and have it rotate, and it will generate a GIF that you can then go and use in any of your projects, use however you want, and then it will give you a GIF. I recommend choosing both rotating globe and rotating sun, so you've got both different options there, but it gives you something to work with. So that's the simple version. Map to globe is what I would consider to be the simple version, but there is another option that you can use. Now, I love using physical maps when I'm playing in person, but I always dread the moment when the players are going to turn around and say, actually, we're not going to go where we had planned, we're going to go in a completely different direction, and I have nothing prepared for that. Which is why I'm really glad that today's video is sponsored by Moonlight Maps and their Plain Terrain Battle Maps Kickstarter. Create the maps that you want within any kind of environment with no more panic sketching, thanks to choosing one of the 8 Plain Terrain environment packs included in the Kickstarter. Each pack comes with 6 25 by 30 inch terrain boards for maximum variety, as well as sheets of matching placeable static cling terrain, which allow you to build your maps maps and scenes in no time at all. You can even use dry erase markers to draw your own features on top of the plain terrain battle maps to give you even more options. As someone who's just recently started playing in person again, I'm super excited to incorporate these into my own game to replace out the plain gridded battle map that I use currently and not have to say to my players, oh, just imagine this is a forest anymore. I can put down a forest tile, populate it with all of the static-cling assets or draw on any key features, and I'm good to go in minutes. The Plain Terrain Kickstarter is live right now, and you'll find a link to back it down in the description below, and thanks again to Moonlight Maps for supporting the channel. That's a site called Planetmaker. Planetmaker is a little bit more complicated and requires a little bit more post-processing work on the kind of back end to get a globe that works, but it makes a better looking image in my opinion. So here we are in Planetmaker. By default it gives us a globe of the Earth, but if we come over into the surface area, we can set custom texture, and then we can upload a bunch of different images and set them for our surface, our normal map, our specular map, our bump map, and our background. Now these will do things for height maps and the way that light plays into the globe, as well as the actual surface itself. But what I like the most about this is that we can upload our own, but then we can just go into the normal maps, and it has a bunch of pre-generated ones already, so we can just go and drag those in. Same with height maps. We can go and we can find a height map that we like the look of, let's say this one, and we can drag it in. Same with specular, we can find a nice looking specular map and drag all them in, set our surface texture to be custom, and then immediately that gives us something that looks more real to my eye than the map to globe version. The map to globe version is very flat, it looks like a projection, whereas this has texture, it has clouds, you can change the surface in a bunch of different ways, and that makes it look a little bit more real. All along the left here, you've got a whole bunch of different options. You can change the axial tilt just like you could before, but then you can also change a bunch of different options with the surface of the world, how shiny it is, where the light direction is coming from. You have a bunch of options with the clouds. You can turn the clouds off if you want, or you can change their hue and their color, how bright they are, their detail level, whether they cast shadows, all of those kind of things. You've got options over on the right to have your local stars. If we spin this around, you can see that it shows the star in relation to the planet. You can turn that off if you want. Then you've got options for atmosphere, so you can come in here and change the altitude of the atmosphere, how far away from the planet it kind of pulls and pushes. It's a great way to get that kind of just little ring of color that I really like, as well as the density, so how much that color bleeds into the planet itself. I like going really thin on that, just so you get that little crown of color without distorting the colors of the globe too much themselves. You can add rings to the world if you want to, so this is really great, especially if you have a non-Earth-like planet. If you're running a game, especially if you're running a sci-fi game and you want to create a variety of different worlds, this is great because you can add rings. You can change the look of those rings and base them on real planets, or choose from a bunch of pre-made options and change their settings. And then you also have options to change the background, so you can have it as blank colors or as star fields or different images. So if we go ahead and set custom texture, what I like to do is I'll upload a magenta background, and then we change the type to image, and we change the image to custom. You can see replace the whole thing with magenta, and that means that when I export this image out, I can pull it into Photoshop and I can choose magenta. Magenta is not a color that's going to appear in my particular map in any kind of significant level, which makes it really easy to remove in Photoshop. So I pull the image out, take it into Photoshop, remove the magenta, and I have my transparent 3D globe image. You can also create moons as well, which is really cool. So you can display your world with a moon. And the thing that I like about that is you're not limited to just one moon, so you can make it so that you can have multiple moons and change their sizes and change details about them, so you can really dial in the details of your world. A lot of this is stuff that you wouldn't necessarily need or want to do for most homebrew campaigns. This isn't a level of detail that you might necessarily want to go into, but If you want to go into that detail, Planetmaker is the one I would choose versus Map to Globe. If you want just a simple quick globe, Map to Globe is the easy option. And then to finish off, I'll give you a couple of quick examples of how I use these globes, the first of which is in my Legend Keeper world. So you can see here, this is the main page for my world of Istar. This is the Atlas page where I can go and click in. You can see that it's got the regular map, that one that I showed in Incarnate earlier. But then on the right, I've set an image for the globe here and have put some Wikipedia style information for the world itself, so that when the players come and look at this, it feels like they're looking at more of a kind of historic or factual thing versus just a bunch of cobbled together notes. Or you can use it in your campaign setting guides. So this is an excerpt from issue 25 of SIDEQUEST magazine that kind of talks about the world of Istar, and you can see that I use the globe map there, and again with that wiki style information about the planet, just to help contextualize and show here is what the world looks like and here is some information about it. Really hope that you found this video helpful. If you did, don't forget to leave a like down below. It really helps the channel out. Let me know how you would use the globe version of a map down in the comments below. And if you haven't already, check out this video where I talk all about how I use Incarnate and give my first impressions on it. But until next time, happy gaming.